Deep in the heart of the bayou, where the cypress trees towered above the murky waters like skeletal fingers and the Spanish moss hung like a pall of death, Ranger Jean-Pierre Pit Laroche knew every inch of the terrain. He was a Cajun, born and bred in the swamp, and he could navigate its treacherous paths with his eyes closed. The bayou was a place of mystery and danger, of gators and snakes and treacherous quicksand. But Pit knew its secrets, knew how to survive in its depths. But even he was not prepared for the horror that lurked in the darkest heart of the bayou. It began with the disappearance of a group of campers. They had set out into the swamp, laughing and joking, their raucous shouts echoing through the trees. But as the days turned into weeks, and no sign of the campers was found, Pit knew something was wrong. The bayou could be a dangerous place for the unwary. A wrong step could see you dragged down into the mud, never to be seen again. But this was different. This felt off. The first clue was a boot, found caught in the tangled roots of a cypress tree. It was heavy with mud, the leather cracked and rotting, and there was a faint trace of blood on the laces, a dull crimson stain that seemed to leap out at Pit. He knew then that he was dealing with something far more sinister than a simple accident. He called in a team, and they set out to comb the bayou, their pirogues gliding silently through the water. But the swamp seemed to swallow all signs of the campers. They found nothing but the boot, and the feeling of being watched grew with every passing hour. Pit tried to shake it off as mere paranoia, the product of too many hours in the blistering sun. But he knew better. The bayou was a place of ancient power, where the veil between the worlds was thin, and he could feel that power stirring, growing restless. It was a prickling sensation on the back of his neck, a cold dread that seemed to seep into his bones. And then the whispers started. At first it was just a rustling of leaves, a snapping of twigs. The bayou was a noisy place, full of life. But then Pit began to make out words, faint but unmistakable. "We're watching you, Pit." The voice was low and rasping, and it seemed to come from all around him. He spun around, his hand on the butt of his gun, but there was never anyone there. But the voice grew louder, more insistent, until he could feel it vibrating through his very bones. It was a call, a summons, and he knew he could not ignore it. One night, he saw it. A figure, tall and imposing, standing just beyond the ring of light cast by the campfire. Its face was deathly pale, the skin drawn tight over the bones. And its eyes. Oh, its eyes burned with a green fire, a malevolent glow that seemed to pierce through the darkness. Pit tried to raise his gun, but his hands were shaking too hard. He tried to speak, but his voice was frozen in his throat. He could only stare as the figure moved closer, its movements slow and deliberate. The figure was dressed in the tattered remnants of a ranger's uniform, the badge gleaming dully on its chest. And then it spoke. Its voice was a barely audible whisper, but the words sent chills down Pit's spine. "They're waiting for you," it rasped. "They're waiting for you down in the water." And with that, it vanished. Pit was left standing alone, his heart pounding in his chest. But he knew he could not stay there. He had to go down into the water, had to face whatever horror was waiting for him. With a deep breath, he waded into the bayou. The water was icy cold, and it seemed to cling to him like a shroud. He could feel eyes watching him, could sense the presence of something ancient and evil lurking just beneath the surface. The cypress trees loomed above him, their branches creaking ominously in the wind. And then, he saw them. The campers, their bodies bloated and pale, their eyes open and staring. They were tied to the roots of a cypress tree, their mouths open in silent screams. Pit tried to swim back to shore, but something grabbed his leg. He looked down to see a bony hand wrapped around his ankle, pulling him down into the depths. He tried to scream, but his lungs were filling with water. And then he saw the face of the ghost ranger, its eyes burning with that same green fire. The ghost mouthed a single word at him. Welcome. And then, everything went black. Pitt's body was never found, but the legend of the Bayou Ranger lived on. They say that on quiet nights you can still hear his screams echoing through the cypress trees. And if you're unlucky enough to venture too deep into the swamp, you might just see him, standing guard over the bodies of the campers. His eyes will be green, burning with that same malevolent glow. And you'll know then that you're doomed, that you'll never escape the bayou alive. For in the heart of the bayou, an ancient horror still lurks, waiting for its next victim. It is a creature of legend, born of the swamp itself. And once you hear the whispers in the water, there's no escape. The bayou will claim you, body and soul. And you'll join Pitt and the campers, trapped forever in its depths.
Thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button, and we'll notify you when the next story comes out.